You can tell a lot about a man by what he does with his hands. My hands, they're builder's hands, stained with grease, nicked with scars. For 15 years, my sanctuary was the scent of gasoline and the feel of cool, polished steel. Her name was Ruby, a 1967 Ford F-100, fire engine red. I found her rusting in a field, a skeleton, and over years and nights and weekends, I brought her back to life. In the quiet of my garage, everything made sense. Cause and effect. A loose bolt got tightened. A dirty carburetor got cleaned. It was a simple, honest world. I thought my life was that simple. I was a foreman for a custom home builder. I had a wife, Sarah, a son, Leo. We had a good life. Or so I believed. But foundations crack, and often you don't hear the sound until it's too late. Sarah changed. The woman who once loved my steadiness started calling it a lack of ambition. She'd come home from her marketing job talking about synergy and leveraging assets, and about him. David Sterling. I met him at a company barbecue. He shook my hand with a grip that was just a little too firm, a performance. I remember exactly what he said, his voice all smooth and condescending. "Ah, so you're the hands-on guy." I could feel him sizing me up and dismissing me, all in one glance. He spent the afternoon near Sarah. His laugh was a weapon, loud, confident. I saw the way she looked at him. It was a look I hadn't seen directed at me in years, a look of pure dazzlement. The cut started small, a comment about my quaint truck, a sigh when I talked about my crew. But the first deep wound came on Leo's 8th birthday. I built him a treehouse, not just some planks, a fortress with a rope ladder and a trap door. He was over the moon, showing his mother a drawing he'd made of it. He was so excited, his little voice just bouncing off the walls. "And this is the lookout tower, and Dad let me hammer in the last nail. It's the best fortress ever." And Sarah, her voice came from behind her phone, distant and distracted. She said, "That's nice, honey. David just sent over tickets for Astroblaze, VIP passes, backstage." Leo's voice got small. "But my treehouse, we were going to camp in it tonight." And then she said the words that felt like a physical blow. She said, "Leo, this is a real experience. It's a Broadway show, not just some nails and wood in the backyard. Not just some nails and wood. Might as well have taken a hammer to my heart." I saw the light just drain out of my boy's face. That was the first true unforgivable act, devaluing the world I built for my son. But the final one, that came on a Tuesday. I just put Leo to bed. I came downstairs, and Sarah was standing there, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold resolution. She said, "Mark, I want a divorce." The words didn't even hurt at first. It was like being flash frozen. She gave me the speech. "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." She said she'd met someone who understood her drive, someone named David. I was a statue. I couldn't speak. And then I heard a small sound on the stairs. Leo was there. His little face was pale, his eyes wide with a terror no child should ever know. He'd heard everything. I went to him, knelt down, and pulled him into my arms. His small body was shaking. He buried his face in my neck, and his whisper was the spark that lit the fuse. He said, "Don't worry, Dad. It's okay. The new man already has the same truck as you, a bigger one. He said yours was a dinosaur." A dinosaur. In that moment, the ice around my heart shattered. This wasn't just about my wife. David Sterling had targeted the sacred bond between me and my son.
our truck, our weekend drives, our sanctuary. He'd mocked it. He'd tried to poison it in my boy's mind. Grief was no longer an option. It was time for architecture. You see, everyone saw Mark the foreman, the simple man. What they didn't see was the legacy my grandfather left me. Land. Hundreds of acres of rural land that was now, suddenly, the last green space in the path of the city's expansion. It was worth a fortune. And David Sterling's crowning achievement, his Sterling Heights project, its only viable access route ran straight through the heart of my property. He didn't know I owned it. He was so arrogantly sure of his power, he never looked too closely. My plan was simple. I would become the immovable object. I would let David build his entire house of cards, and then I would calmly, legally, pull the land out from under it. I met my old friend Arthur, my lawyer, in a dingy diner far from town. Over bad coffee, I laid it all out. I told him, his entire project hinges on that one parcel. And he's already pressuring city inspectors, cutting corners. He's making enemies. I'm just going to give those enemies a fortress to hide in.
I became a ghost, a patron saint of consequences. I discreetly funded a local conservation group. I provided them with ecological surveys that showed my land was a vital habitat for a tiny, endangered frog. They filed a petition to have it protected. It was a legal moat. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were a theater of cruelty. Sarah's lawyer, a shark named Reynolds, filed motion after motion, trying to prove I was an unfit father, financially unstable. And David? He loved to make appearances. Once, he cornered me after a deposition, out on the street with the city traffic buzzing around us. His voice was so slick, so condescending. He said, "Mark, look, this is just sad. A man like you, these legal fees have to be crippling. Be the bigger man. Walk away. I'll make sure you're comfortable." Then I heard it. Beep, beep. The sound of a key fob, the lock-unlock sound of a modern truck. He said, "See, I get it. The appeal. I've got the new limited edition. All the power, none of the rust." I looked at his massive, black, soulless truck. Then I looked at him, and I made a choice. I let my shoulders slump. I made my voice small and defeated. I said, You're probably right, David. It's a lot. Maybe I just need to know when I'm beat." I could hear the triumph in his voice. He said, "Smart man. It's for the best." And I heard him walk away, his footsteps confident. He believed his own story. He never saw mine being written. The final custody hearing was their victory lap. The courtroom was hushed. Sarah and David sat there, a picture of tailored confidence. Leo was squeezed between them, looking lost. He wouldn't look at me. Sarah's lawyer, Reynolds, gave his closing argument, his voice sharp and nasal. He went on and on about my static career and David's visionary success, providing a world of opportunity. Then, it was Arthur's turn. He stood up, calm as ever, and said, "Your Honor, the petitioner's entire case rests on a financial fantasy. Let's discuss the stability of Mr. David Sterling." He entered the financial prospectus for Sterling Heights. He outlined the massive investment, and then he delivered the first brick. The project's viability hinges entirely on the acquisition of Parcel 7, owned
by the Harding Family Trust. I watched David. I could see his smug little smirk. The judge, an older man with a stern voice, asked, "And is the trust willing to sell?" Arthur said, "No, Your Honor, the trust is not willing to sell, at any price." The smirk vanished. Arthur continued, his voice ringing in the quiet room. "In fact, the trust has just signed a perpetual conservation easement designating the land as a protected habitat. Development is now legally impossible."
I heard a chair scrape back violently. David shot to his feet. His voice was a strangled shout, panicked and furious. "This is a setup! This is sabotage!" And Arthur, cool as ice, just talked right over him. "Furthermore, we have petitioned the city to revoke all preliminary permits for the Sterling Heights project, effective immediately." It was the 1-2 punch, the legal knockout. David completely lost it. He was yelling now, pointing right at me. "You pathetic little man! You did this! You ruined me over a woman? Over a truck? You're nothing! A jealous, petty mechanic!" The judge slammed his gavel, his voice booming. "Mr. Sterling, you will control yourself or I will have you removed." But the damage was done. In his meltdown, he showed everyone in that room exactly who he was. The visionary was just a vicious bully. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at Sarah, but I could feel her horror from across the room. I looked only at my son. Leah was staring at me, his eyes wide, but the misery was gone, replaced by a look of stunned revelation. He saw his father not as a defeated man, but as a quiet force. A slow, tremulous smile spread across his face. His faith was restored. The fallout was absolute. Sterling Heights collapsed. The investors sued. David lost everything. His company, his assets, that big black truck, everything. He became a ghost. Sarah was left with the ashes of her choice. The luxurious life she traded us for was gone. There was no apology. What could she even say? As for me and Leo, we built a new life. On a different part of my land, I built us a new home with a huge workshop. Ruby sits right in the center, and next to her is a beat-up old Jeep that Leo and I are restoring together. A new project, a new legacy. One evening, we were welding, sparks flying like tiny stars. Leo lowered his mask and asked me, "Dad, that land, the one Mr. Sterling wanted, what are we going to do with it?" I shut off the welder. The sudden silence was peaceful. I told him, "We're not going to build a shopping mall, son. We're turning it into a public nature preserve, with hiking trails. It'll be named after your great-grandfather." His smile, it was brighter than the welding arc. He said, "So we beat him and then we built a park?" I laughed and put my arm around him. "Something like that, buddy. We built a park." I drove home the other day, Ruby's engine rumbling that familiar, comforting song. Leo was waiting for me on the porch. He waved. I turned off the ignition, and in the quiet that followed, I took a deep breath of the clean, pine-scented air. I had my son. I had my peace. I had the profound, quiet satisfaction of an architect who had looked at a broken world and with patience and precision built a better one.